everything, down to the way I would sit and hold my teacup.
It was funny because I'd always heard that French women are extremely relaxed about nudity and sexuality, and you know, when they get to the beach, they get all their gear off and everything's fabulous. And in Paris, they all parade around in next to nothing and lay out on the river in the summer with nothing on. Well, that's just not what I perceive at all. Since I've been here, I find the women extremely uptight. Oh yes, the women are so relaxed about being naked, but actually I've spoken to French women and they don't like it. They don't like it. They're not relaxed about it. I can see they're not relaxed about it.
There is so much opportunity in this city that people, they almost can't help themselves in search of these phenomenal things that exist here. People have a tendency to lose themselves. They do.
Moi je pense que c'est souvent des images un petit peu truquées car souvent lorsqu'on présente toujours des beaux mannequins, que ce soit des mannequins femmes ou des mannequins hommes, surtout dans la publicité ou dans le cinéma, ça fait toujours rêver les gens. Et je trouve que là, on blouse, c'est un petit peu du leurre, c'est-à-dire qu'on montre toujours des belles images, mais la réalité, c'est pas ça. La réalité, c'est les gens font avec leur physique, font avec leur mental. Les gens ont des soucis dans le travail, des gens ont des soucis familiaux, et c'est vrai que le sport permet de s'évader un petit peu de tous ces soucis. Et je trouve que ce qu'on montre à la télé n'est pas toujours la réalité.
One of the most profound illusions that people have to confront is what is reality? When most of reality is presented by media, you're looking at a very distorted picture. Imagine what the shape of the human distribution in our society is. Those people that we admire and look to as an example of what life's supposed to be like, they're not in the top 5%. They're in the top 0.0001%. They're in the smallest part of our world. And the illusion that that tiny sample, this little group of people that we think all of the world is supposedly like, is a terrible distortion that leaves most people confused about what is real, what is the truth.
For the first time in my life, I feel personally affected by advertising, which I really object to, strongly object to. What is that doing to the mindset of young girls? Seeing everyday posters, for example, recently an ad for lingerie, a naked woman, completely naked, headless. One could argue it's so they don't have to pay the model so much, but every chemist here, or pharmacy, the windows are just full of posters of cellulite-free asses. And that's for 10 months of the year, all advertising for anti-cellulite products. Thin, thin, thinner, thinner.
C'est vrai que fut un temps, on axait beaucoup l'image sur le physique de la femme, mais maintenant on voit par certaines publicités, notamment de maillots de bain ou des sous-vêtements masculins, on voit surtout maintenant des hommes, des beaux Apollons grecs, et c'est vrai que là aussi ça donne toujours une image un petit peu fabuleuse du corps humain.
There seems to be a trap that they fall into where they think that they have to look a certain way, they have to have a certain haircut, they have to have a certain cut of their body to be perfect. And they have to express themselves in a certain way and wear the right glasses and use the right hair gel, and they kind of become clones of each other. It's very bizarre. And I don't understand why, really. Why the loss of individuality, because that's what makes people beautiful and interesting is what they have to offer as an individual. there's a great deal of narcissism. You know, we could talk about me, but, you know, really, what do you think about me?
Just watching women on the metro, on the street, in the restaurants and cafes, and even in fact at private parties and dinners and what have you, they're not relaxed. They are not relaxed with other women. But to me it all stems from the exploitation of women in advertising. I truly believe that. It's my theory, it could be completely wrong. And what it is to be sexual and a woman in France, and that is to be thin and glamorous and gorgeous and cellulite free at all times.
Il faut toujours se méfier un petit peu de ce qu'on peut montrer à la télé, et surtout ces belles images des filles pulpeuses avec de la poitrine bien faite, des fesses bien rondes. Souvent, ce sont des images qui sont souvent irréelles et souvent truquées.
Sure, when you're young and they dress you up and you have hairstylists and makeup artists and great clothes and you look beautiful, but that same girl, when she goes home and washes it all off and jumps in front of the TV, or she just is like another girl. It's hard for a model to attain that level of so-called beauty the whole every day of her life. It's just not realistic. It's not realistic for anyone to achieve, even a model. It was just a world totally absorbed with how you look. And that was it. That was all that mattered.
The most important thing to look for is to say, well, how do I fit in? Everyone can be in the top 10% in something they do. And certainly as they become aware of what their potentials are, what they're great at, they can be, you know, more successful in that realm. But more importantly is that they realize that they don't have to be in following that furthest, most extreme one tiny sample of people, but that they can go back and look at their brothers and sisters, their colleagues, their friends, and realize that the average person, where they spend most of their life, is just like them. And that's something that is so far distorted, it is very hard for most people to relate to and understand.
What really sells, I mean, it's just kind of a basic fact and basic ideal of you know, what goes on here. But, you know, what sells is 20 years old and, you know, 17 to 20. And, my gosh, I have friends that are 22 that lie about their age. That's silly. It's silly. And it saddens me. It really does. I consider it almost ageism. It's almost a discrimination against becoming older.
Obviously, you start to look outside that circle, and for me, it was a great discovery. For some other girls, I don't think they're as fortunate. They can't see a future for themselves outside of this world because they have no other skills. They have left school early, and everything, as I said, is based on the way that they look.
I like to think it's like water off a duck's back and it doesn't affect me at all, but actually some days, you know, if you're feeling a bit not too fabulous and the first thing you do in the morning on the metro is look out and there's just another naked body telling you, you know, something ludicrous, well, you know, we all know that the advertising and, well, the beauty industry exists and survives because of women's insecurities. You know, you feeling not so fabulous one day, so you head on out and buy a bit of a lipstick or a shoe or a new frock or something. That's the way it works. That's the way it's always worked. That's why the images projected are generally unobtainable.
part of the problem is that success breeds this corruption of the image, because only people at the very top of the ladder are able to stay in that top 1% of the percent. And they are in control of the knowledge, the information. And so there is a very significant distortion, and I wouldn't call it a conspiracy, but there is a distortion, a unfortunate circumstance where most people in our society have the wrong impression of what reality is. And it's ironic that they too are searching for what is average. They too are looking for what they could be as part of all the other people. And that's the notion of unity that people search for and rarely find.
I don't particularly like what it is that I'm expected to be. I'm slightly irritated by the fact that I am not seen for what I am inside. It's all about a pretty face, a pretty body, a pretty picture, and I understand that that's what is marketable.
It's out of control. And I think it's destructive. I think it's destructive to women, and especially to young girls who are searching for their self-value. They have to transcend the images and look elsewhere.
On fabrique un sourire, on fabrique souvent une image, et la réalité c'est pas ça. La réalité c'est ce qu'on rencontre tous les jours. Autour de soi, on voit des gens obèses, des gens rachitiques, des gens malades, et la réalité c'est réellement ça. C'est pour ça que faire du sport c'est très important, parce que ça masque un petit peu cette image.
I can depend on my belief structures, and I can depend on my skills in other areas, and I can depend on being a kind, warm, compassionate person, and people will like me for those reasons also, or as well as, or if not above and beyond the way that I look.
So many of my clients, attractive women that come to me and they are so critical of themselves. They look at themselves and they have beautiful, wonderful bodies, but they compare themselves to the girls in the model magazines and on TVs and whatever. And it's such a distortion that they lose sight of what is an accurate judgment. And of course, these people are even way above average sometimes, and they yet still are so critical. And this is very painful and very abnormal for our world. People should learn to accept who they are and realize that they can be accurate in determining where do they fit in society. And when they become more aware of that, they're not afraid, they're not frightened, they're not concerned. They realize that they fit, that they work, that they are part of the whole picture. And that's something that very few people ever really reach.
It so saddens me. I see women. This city is not kind to women as they get older. It's not a good city to grow old in. It's very youth-oriented. And as they grow older, I see nips and tucks and a little of this, a little lip injection, a little tuck, a little of this, a little of that. And it's amazing. They almost seem to become caricatures of themselves.
I guess by the time I was about 21, 22, I was known as the grandma in the industry also, which may seem very young to a lot of people, but you've got to remember I was competing against girls who were 14, 15, 16, and their skin is just so fresh and unblemished. And at 21, you're still very young, and it was hard for me to share the feelings that I had with members of the family or other people that were outside of the industry. Then I felt old. I seriously felt like I had passed my use-by date at 21.
And it seems that men are more accepted. They become debonair and fabulous in their 30s, 40s, 50s, whatever it may be. And I'm not a big fan of this. I want to grow old gracefully. I'm not the picture-perfect, typical actress that you would normally find, you know, being 80 pounds and not eating very much. But I feel that I have a great depth within me that I would like to be able to express to people.
And that's what we call an inner beauty. That's not something that society or the media wants to explore too much, because then you wouldn't need all these products to try to buy beauty, to receive a form of recycled beauty that is packaged and boxed and sold to us in this $20 billion a year industry that I was working in.
Si on ne triche pas avec soi-même, on ne triche pas avec les autres. Donc c'est pour ça qu'il faut avoir son image et sa vraie image, telle qu'on l'aperçoit, telle qu'on la dessine dans sa tête. C'est ça qui est important. Et le sport aide à ça.
When we look at our society and we look at what we value, those values are dependent on something. And unfortunately, we are dependent on the images that we see on television and the magazines. And when that image is distorted because it's not representing the average person, but representing the tiniest 1/10 or 1,000 of 1% of the whole of our country, then the illusion that it is creating separates people not only from reality, but from themselves. And when they realize that the whole world is filled with diversity, that we should hold diversity up and not suppress it, then they realize that, oh, I'm a unique and special person and I can fit. And in that moment, they lose their fear and their worries, and they can go on to succeed at their goals.
And I forged a path in my writing, which 3 years ago I began a journalism degree, which I've just graduated from, which is great.
I find myself in a predicament these days where my world is constantly changing. My utopia, the things that I search for, are constantly evolving. The world is a strange place to me right now. I'm currently morphing into something else, which I'm not exactly sure what that is right now. But I find such a level of frustration across the board in life. I used to think that I would achieve my goals and everybody would live happily ever after, including myself. And I've realized recently that that's not the case, that I will continue to evolve and to grow throughout my entire existence. And I want to fight to make the world a better place, even in a small capacity.
It's only been recently, in the last 4 or 5 years, that I've started to evaluate my own ideals and try to live up to a reasonable expectation of or portrayal of my beliefs and roles in life and my morals. And I'm finding this period of my life much more rewarding than I did then, although it was very exciting. But for me to base my whole life around that again, I'd have to be 15 and vulnerable.
I think that women have to see that it's bullshit and we're being manipulated. Voilà, c'est tout.
I'm in search of greatness, whether it be for myself or to do something that makes a difference. Today, I'm not quite sure what that will be. Give me an hour, though. That may change.
Andre, your hair. What drove you to?
Insanity! You mean like to bleach my hair?
Yeah, I mean,
I know.
it's obviously hip.
Exactly, but it's stupid. I mean, it's funny is I want to be
10 years ago.
Exactly.
No,
I want to be trendy and I want to be in, but then I feel bad about doing that. And you know, like take the fashion industry. It's stupid that the clothes that I wore 2 years ago are out of style now, and it's just because a designer decided that it was out of style and they're no longer sold in stores. And now I need to feel stupid about wearing clothes that are no longer in style.
Right.
And there's such an emphasis on how you look within our society, totally.
I remember buying my overalls and being like, God, I hope I can wear these next year. And you hung on. Nobody else is, but I am. No. First of all, they suck up your money. I paid $122 for this, my red hair. That's ridiculous,
that's a lot of money.
dude. That was my birthday present to
But
myself.
I mean, well, take it a step further and look at the difference. I think the emphasis on beauty, I say, is especially hard for women within our societies compared to males. I mean,
Absolutely.
I like to be in style and stuff, but if I'm not buff and I'm a little overweight, women can still find me attractive.
Dude, you can hide your panties in that baggy shirt.
Exactly.
Whereas me, that's a little more difficult for our spandex fashion.
I know. I mean, like, take a look at the fashions. Like, all the girls are wearing tight shirts, and if you don't have like bolt-ons, you're gonna be like. I mean, there's the emphasis on breast size, and especially in LA. I mean, look at so many women are getting breast augmentation.
Right.
Why?
But some of them are getting reductions.
To the right size, because
One of them.
family got a reduction because she had them too big. You know, but I mean, who set the standard for what size breast size is okay?
I don't know. Have you heard of? I forget her name. It's Wendy something. She went to Harvard. She has a book about modesty. Have you heard of her?
No.
I don't know, she's been interviewed about it, and she's just calling women back to the days of modesty, and I guess not so much in dress, but in the way that you act and function in society. You don't have to put out or, you know, whatever to be acknowledged as a woman and stuff. And also that men should protect women, like in their womanness or whatever. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Who defines beauty? I mean, obviously, the media does. I mean, we have like our Gwyneth, that's beauty, and we have to be like that. That's
Yeah, society definitely does, because if you go to when I was in the Marshall Islands, if there was a skinny woman like that, none of the men wanted a skinny woman. They wanted a nice plump woman.
Yeah,
you know,
that's right.
So it is, and beauty has changed within our country. Look into the days like when Marilyn Monroe, more voluptuous.
right.
I mean,
We have Drew Barrymore though. She's a full-figured gal.
Yeah, exactly. But still, she's kind of one of, instead of these slender women with large breasts. I mean, that's definitely what society is saying right now is the standard for beauty.
Right.
But I mean, I don't know. It's just.
It's not only.
It's very difficult from anybody's. It's so difficult from anybody's perspective. Everybody, I think, in general, would like to change certain things about the way they look.
Yeah, but when your
why?
whole definition of value is from an externalized place.
Well, of course it is. The media
It's never
rams it
enough.
down your throat 24/7.
True, and especially this area, because a job depends on
On how you look, yeah, not how talented you
beating the
are.
guy out is all externalized. But the problem when you're taking the individual into consideration is the fact that because an externalized value system is not where value is, it does not mean anything. There's never enough. So most of the people I deal with out here there's just never a stopping point. No matter how beautiful you are, it's not beautiful enough because there's the next beautiful girl. In fact, a lot of the women I deal with that come from, Iowa, they're the prettiest girl and they're the homecoming queen, and they come out and they've always gotten the accolades of being enough, and they come to LA and all of a sudden they're in a fishbowl with millions of other people that look as good as they do or better,
They're
and
just
all
one
of
of
a sudden
a dozen that have arrived on the bus that morning.
they're just insignificant all of a
Yeah.
sudden. So their whole perception of value changes, even though they could be the same person, but because it's an externalized value, they now are nothing. So that's why eating disorders and stuff come into play, because they have to control that externalized look.
Okay, so all right, my question being then is, who Who sets what the values are? Who sets what the benchmarks are? Because if you go back in time, you know, you have people who are the Rubenesque type women wouldn't even get a second look today. So what happens when these values change? It's almost an insanity to think that you're trying to make yourself beautiful for today, yet tomorrow, with the values, if the external values change, because you know, whatever media mogul or whatever model has become popular or whatever style or fashion has become popular.
What I think how it often transpires is not only do you have a societal value, right now it's a lot of, I mean, you look at the high fashion trends like Calvin Klein or Gap, or I mean, Gap isn't high fashion, but it's a very accessible kind of scene. It's all, you look at the thinness and the health of the models, and that has a part of it. There's definitely that wafy, gaunt kind of,
which isn't particularly healthy.
Which isn't particularly healthy, but that has an effect on it. But what, on a more individual level, what I see kind of within the individual rather than the collective is, it's usually translated down from the family home. Like if a mother is super obsessed with how she looks, how, you know, how she's eating, what's, you know, all these things that happen, the family is going to have that script of value translated or transferred down. So it's often, when I'm dealing with family units, it's often dealing with the parents' value system and then the kids. Because what you have in this particular demographic is you have a lot of parents who have been versed in this society of externalized value. Everybody has to have the BMW, the Mercedes, you know, all the cars, and then you have the clothes, and then you have the homes, and even to just exist out here, there's, because it goes beyond body.
It's very interesting because it's just not something that it's not something I was particularly raised with. I mean, or subconsciously I wasn't raised with it. I mean, sorry, let me rephrase that. Subconsciously I was raised with it, but consciously it was never put in your face. And you know, and it's quite interesting when you talk to people and you understand how they come through the American high school system of what values. You know, the homecoming queen, the going out with the best looking football player, trying to get
who's wearing what?
Who's wearing what? Who's doing this? Well, it's the peer pressure is definitely there, but I don't know. It's just different. It's a different culture. And the point is, I don't think. I mean, maybe now, maybe the world has pretty much caught up with itself as far as the Western world is concerned. But when I was growing up, there wasn't the media. The media wasn't throwing it down your throat all the time, and there was definitely the sort of the keeping up with the Joneses.
Yeah.
But often that was based on academic tributes or monetary pursuits. I mean, I've never been to a place here where it's so based on physicality.
It's really sad.
And it is, because I know great actresses who can't get a part because they don't look right.
It's completely true, and it's an applied pressure. I was going to comment on what you were saying about the school system. So I mean, it really is isolated at times to certain pockets in the country, but LA is really bad. I had to go talk at a elementary school for kids between ages of 2nd grade and 4th grade, and the reason I had to go in and talk was that I had to talk to the parents because the girls were not wanting to wear shorts to PE because their legs were too fat. There was all kinds of comments of girls not wanting to wear sweatpants and not even wanting to go participate because of what they had to wear and because they thought their thighs were too big. I'm sorry, but they're in 3rd grade, 2nd grade. And you don't
these stories about
get
people
that.
Start working out at the age of 9, 10, and 11. I mean, how insane is that? You don't even develop any muscle groups.
The key thing, though, is I needed to go talk to the parents because it isn't just society. It's really the parents that have a lot of the control over what's going on there.
Well, now you're getting into a subject that's much more interesting. Is the principle of responsibility? Who actually is necessarily responsible?
Well, I think ultimately, if the parents were responsible to their own relationship with their food and relationship with food and body and their own, because, for example, if a mother tells her daughter, "Honey, you're the most beautiful thing in the world. You can do anything you want," but all the daughter hears the mother saying is, "Oh my God, my thighs are so big. What am I going to do? I can't have this and I can't have that." They don't hear, the daughter doesn't hear. She was. And from New York.
Yeah.
No, the daughter doesn't hear, "Honey, you're beautiful. she hears that you're going to be beautiful
Well,
if your thighs
no,
stay
yeah,
fit.
right.
So then you have the kids going to school, and then you have, you know, it's all has everything to do with it. But I think ultimately, if the parents looked at their relationship with themselves and their relationship with society, they're ultimately the teachers. So you can give a safety net to your kids and put them in different environments if they have a safety of understanding of their own value. But in this area, it's hard because the parents have the scripted value of what society's and it's everybody trying to keep up with everybody else. But you go even across the county line into San Bernardino. In fact, I had a client write a poem about I'm hip in San Bernardino because she feels fat and ugly in LA. The minute she crosses into San Bernardino, she knows she's hip and okay.
Right.
Because just by going into a different city where the pressure's less and the demographics different, it's like your whole perception of yourself changes, which one ultimately shouldn't be.
Well, no. And a lot of it's just from the daily ingestion of whatever's around me, the media. You know, you can't walk down the street without seeing a billboard with somebody who's half naked, you know, who doesn't look at all similar to me. But yeah, they probably construct their sentences with two-syllable words.
So you can throw back a certain arrogance about
Well,
it.
there is, yeah, of course there is, yeah.
Compensate for that.
But there you are. There you are. We're talking about value systems. I value there's a certain value to the intellectual side of it.
True.
And you completely disregard the physicality
Well,
of it. But if you value that in American society, you're classed as a nerd, which you're automatically looked down upon and scorned upon, which is really funny, which is really strange, because in so many other societies, particularly in Europe, for somebody who's intelligent and can actually make some difference to the community at large, to come from to Los Angeles and think, you know, I'm good enough to make it here. I have everything within me that I need to make it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm as good as you know, X, Y, Z. But then to be completely judged on the way you look must be totally soul destroying. It's you know, it's to not be allowed to get a foot in the door, you know, as an actress because, you know, you don't look this particular flavour of the month, or to not be able to work as a musician because you're not into this particular style of music that everybody's, you know, and it's the whole pigeonholing of things that America does so well that increases the pressure, whether it be the pressure of the way you look, the way you feel, what you think, who you associate with. You know, I mean, it just goes on and on and on. It's the pigeonholing, and we all want to slot into a pigeonhole because society, we feel we fit better in society. If we slot into a pigeonhole, then we can associate with people who are like us. But it's strange. It's a strange place to be.
Proof of national pride or patriotism that if people would consume, that would get the economy going. And so if you didn't consume, really, you weren't patriotic. And I thought, well, consume for whom? For me? Or for the few people at the very top who are going to rake in the money? But of course, it's never put in those terms. And people are made to feel that if there's less consumption, it's the end of the world.
Because the world is directed by this type of ideology, which is the market economy, that is buy, you know, to make the whole machine, you know, to keep the whole thing going.
Yeah, but we're persuaded that the thing that we're buying is absolutely essential. We couldn't live without it.
Yeah. I think it's very, very interesting how you know, all the people who work for marketing try to know how to make you feel insecure about who you are,
Sure.
and unsatisfied about what you have. I think it's very, very interesting how these people know how to manipulate you. And look at, you know, the little ads, you know, when you watch TV. It's crazy. And very often, I don't know if you've noticed, it's very much linked with sex. Indirectly or directly, there's always, you know, especially when it comes to just clothing and food and stuff, the whole sex part is very much linked to the ads.
I think it's C.S. Lewis who said something like, somebody who has an obsession with things sexual, not necessarily in a perverse way, has very little sales resistance. He had a lovely sense of humor. And I think that's very much exploited. I sometimes wonder, somebody in 200 years' time would come and look at our society now, look at the videos, if they could run them on their machines, whatever they've got, and look at our obsessions now, particularly with, sex and everything, and not find us strange. I mean, a bit like we would find the Victorians strange.
Because in my opinion, our goal, people's main goal in today's society is not, to be happy. I guess it's not even to be happy with someone. It's to be, to have some kind of power, to be able to seduce, the more of the opposite sex, I guess, or even people from the same sex, by having a nicer car, nicer house. I don't think they're looking for for peace of mind, or how would a Buddhist religion put it?
A kind of tranquility.
Tranquility. Balance.
Yeah.
I think modern man is very unbalanced. He's only looking for his one little. He wants to be very powerful. He wants to be able to seduce.
And project the right image, I suppose.
I think it's typical from. It's very, very much similar to what happened to the garden in the Garden of Eden. When. According to the Bible, Satan as a snake, he would tell Eve that if you grab these fruits,
that's true.
You're gonna be like God. Okay, so I think that we're gonna have. What does it mean?
You're saying that's the first marketing campaign.
Maybe it is. It is. The will to have some power, the will to be a little bit higher than the so-called normal human being.
There's something missing in your life, and I have this product called a fruit.
Exactly. If you wear this kind of thing, if you buy this type of car, you're going to be... if you go to, let's say, Los Angeles, you go to the suburbs, and you see all those pretty much same houses. Every single one has a swimming pool.
Sure.
It's crazy. And once I talk to some people, how come every single house has a swimming pool? Because, wouldn't it be sometimes easier, even when there's the same family? There's the kids, the parents, and, the two houses have a swimming pool. Wouldn't it be easier to just have one and invite, each other around, to enjoy the water and stuff? And he said, here, if you don't have a pool to impress the neighborhood, then, it's
you don't count.
Exactly.
Well,
you have to be your swimming pool in your garden.
It's easy to see that in the States, but every society has that, I think it's perhaps a part of human nature that the capitalist consumer society has known to exploit to maximum, but it's there in everybody. Whether you're going to show off your cloth in West Africa or your kente, which if you can wear that and it's a particularly interesting pattern, then you're a big wig. And
ultimately, what it boils down for me is that people have been deprived of the teaching, of a guidance of what beauty means. Beauty has been defined by the media and people who have access to our attention to define the beauty for us. And it has been changing for decades, There was women who were a little stronger, were more beautiful before, and today we have some of the photo models that come to our congregation and our members, and they say it's a really torturing job to keep this kind of bag with bones kind of look. They've done research when I was in my graduate school, and they would just they would ask men about the beauty of women in the pictures. And men are those who are supposed to be more visual and react that way. And they would put a little biography, a paragraph under each picture. And they realized when they would switch biographies that the way they perceive a person would change. So outside look was strongly affected, significantly affected by what you know about the person. They were asked to rate the beauty of a person. And so it is with life, with our lives. There's no education or society is not passing the tradition and knowledge of what we as humanity have learned about what real beauty is.
Without spirituality, there's no way that a person can really define a value source other than that externalized beauty or youth or whatever. Because I think the spirituality, or at least acknowledging your own essence or your own spirit or your own self. Because if that's not there, then you're going to be constantly pursuing something that basically, it's kind of basically being of this world. The of this world stuff goes away.
Well, absolutely.
Let's say you just take your own value. Okay, where do you define your own value from? I mean, you could define it from, how do you know that you're loved? If you didn't get it from your parents, and if you're not getting it from society, then what do you do? And I deal with people like that all the time. They didn't get it from their parents, and they certainly don't get it from this area. So where do they go? Okay, unless there's an element of spirit, some kind of spirituality, it's really, really difficult to find that definition or that understanding of yourself. So,
well, it's a journey within.
Yeah, it's a journey within, but it's also, I mean, like we were reading the other day, and there's different ways to do it. I mean, depending on what faith you come from, if it's, there's all kinds of
You don't need to have a religious doctrine to be spiritual.
No, but you could. I mean, you could define. I mean, personally, I apply myself to understanding that there's a higher spiritual power than myself. Right. So, by defining my value that way, I can get out of the externalized sphere. Okay, if I'm stuck if there's no greater thing than myself, then I'm really stuck in that definition of externalized.
Well, that's it. If you acknowledge that there is a higher power, then you release the bondage of self, is what the expression is. By acknowledging that there is something greater than you, it allows you to acknowledge that not everything that goes on within you is either A, at your control, B, you can have any you can have any control over. So with that way, I mean that's the true definition of spirituality. Is allowing yourself to be free of the bondage of all of the crap that's being amassed upon you, and say, I can't deal with this, but there's a higher power that will, or I have to give this over, or I acknowledge that even how I feel about myself today, this too shall pass, because I acknowledge that there are greater forces working than than my boss down the street, who's been trying to screw me over for the last 6 weeks. It really helps to live outside of yourself a little bit. I mean, isn't that the fundamentals of spirituality?
Yeah, that is. I think there's also an aspect of either looking at the fact that your truth is ultimate value and love, like the truth that you own, the truth that you have already, and the fact that we enter this life and we learn how to dismiss that. We learn how not to acknowledge that truth.
Sure,
okay? But that truth, I think, is our spiritual understanding. If you don't, if you start learning, if you start out with the value, the truth that you're unconditionally loved, but pretty soon, if you're not, wearing the right thing, or if you're not doing the right thing, or if all these things start dismissing the truth or diminishing it, pretty soon it just becomes layered over and buried, and soon you just don't see it. And I think if you're without understanding back into that spirituality, there's no way to get out of that.
Because recognizing beauty and enjoying beauty is a form of worship. God gave us ability to do so. Not all beauty should be in service of preaching the gospel, or promoting something higher value. Enjoying beauty in itself, it's worship, it's a good thing. People have lost that sense. It's usually enjoying beauty to sell something, or enjoying beauty to accomplish a certain goal. But contemplating on what's beautiful, people don't do that anymore. I mean, museums are too slow, you know, they're introducing all kinds of entertainment in the museums and things like that. They don't observe life anymore. They don't hold back and observe life as it is. Ordinary is the most beautiful thing. In ordinariness of life, as you look at it, it teems with life, with beauty, you can spy God in His action through normal life. While through artificial things, like a movie and things that are structured, you cannot catch those things. You can have a candy that tastes like apple, but doesn't compare to apple. You can never get a taste of a real thing.
Isn't it interesting that in times of crisis, our ideas of who the real heroes are change? It's not the beautiful people anymore. We go for substance. It's the man who goes into a crumbling building. It's the woman who goes into a car that's burning to save a child. They become the real heroes. They're the beautiful people. So where do we get our view of ourselves from? Which is the authentic one? Is it the media? We know they change their minds all the time. Is it our environment? If I come from a good family, then it's great. But if I had the bad luck to be born into an abusive family, what then about my self-image? We have that when I've got a little girl, and when she grows up, I want her to really believe that she's important, that she has meaning, and she is here for a purpose. And where does she get that from? And we can all choose our worldviews. And if a person wants to say, I'll take it from the media or my environment, that's fair enough. But for me, I've chosen the option as a Christian that God made me, and He made me important. He died for me, and because of that, my life has meaning. It doesn't matter what I look like, how intelligent I am, or how rich I am.